Hey guys, it's Jello the Casual Card Gamer. Welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a while since the last upload and I'm finally doing that how to play Vanguard thing, but just a disclaimer for this entire series until probably May. Vanguard is actually going through a rebooting sort of transition phase, so some of the things that I'm going to be explaining will no longer be relevant in terms of standard format, but everything that is existent up until now will still be valid for what will be called a V format. I'm filming this in retrospect of that. I've already finished editing the first episode, but I just wanted to let you guys know so that you guys have an idea of what is going to change, and that is it. Anyway, let's get straight to the types of cards you'll find in Vanguard. Okay, so here we have a Yu-Gi-Oh card set beside a Vanguard card. Now I'm just going to go over what similarities they have, and then I'll go into the more intricate details of the Vanguard card once we've gone over all of what you need to know coming from Yu-Gi-Oh. So here we have the name of each card. We have the level or grade of each card. I'm going to just, for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to use those as an equivalent. We have the ability of each card. So anything in this text box over here is the ability of this card, and we have their attack values. And the way that defense works in Vanguard is a little bit different, which I'll explain later on, but for simplicity's sake, the base defense value of this card, Blue Sky Knight Alt Mile, is 13,000 as well. Okay, and other things to note, I guess, are the card number in the set that it's coming from. So you can see from the Live Twin Lila, this is gem -EN014, and this card's number is VTD11001EN. So this is the first card in this set, and it is the English version. As you can also see there, they have the EN for English. So that is everything, and of course the card art is also there. That's sort of already self-explanatory. I didn't really have to point that out, but I did anyway. And yeah, that is pretty much everything. And one thing that I've been raving on about the whole time I've been in the Yu-Gi-Oh card space is that the card says who the illustrator is. So it's just in the corner right there. Not too much. Some of the other cards have very long names for their artists, and some are super short. There is the card artist. So one more thing that I can't show with Lila, but I can show with the Blue Eyes White Dragon, is the flavor text. So regardless of whether or not the monster or the unit in Vanguard is vanilla or has an ability, the card flavor text is right there. So believe in yourself and believe in the future. So normally these are quotes of the unit in the picture, or they are things that are happening around, or just, you know, their description. So, and there we go. This is the legendary. This legendary dragon is a powerful machine of destruction, virtually invisible. Okay, so moving on to the specifics of the Vanguard card. So we've already gone over the name and the art and the flavor text and the effect. So the other parts of the card that I'm going to point out now are, I'm just going to call this the grade ability. So as you can see here, this unit has an ability called Twin Drive, which I'll get into later once we get into the actual battle phase, or actually just when we start talking about grades. And the clan imaginary gift, which is called Force, and another thing that I'll be going into. Next we have in the abilities here, you can see these small icons, and these correspond to where this ability is allowed to activate. So there are two types of circles in the game, and I'll get into those later. And one thing that I can touch on now are the abilities. So the first type of ability that I'm going to explain is the continuous abilities. So here you can see that it is marked by the red CONT, and this ability is basically your unit's passive ability. So as long as your board, I guess I can say, meets the requirements, or yeah, as long as the board meets the requirements, or it just says that this thing happens, it's happening all the time. So in this card's case, during your turn, if you have no face-up cards in your damage zone, this unit gets plus 15,000 strength. Now, some of these have requirements, such as that, if you have. Some of these just happen. And that's the beauty of continuous abilities. I personally love continuous abilities because it all I have to do is remember, like, okay, yeah, this is happening regardless. Next, we have our acted skills. So our acted skills, again, can only activate in certain places, this one being in only one, because as you can see here, this one is a little more liberal with where you can activate it. This one has to be in a specific place, and I'll get into these places later on. So these types of abilities you have to remember to activate. So the easiest equivalent that I can put towards is something like Destiny Hero Malicious. So when this is put into the graveyard, it doesn't have to happen right away. You can activate it any time that you want, and that is sort of the parallel that I can draw with active skills. You can activate them anytime you want, as long as, again, you meet the requirements, and as long as you haven't already activated any more times that it's legal. So you can see here, this is the symbol for once per turn, and I'll get into the symbols again later on. And the third type of ability is auto. So the auto ability happens as soon as the requirement is met. So unlike acted skills, where you can activate them anytime you want, as long as you meet the requirements, this one has to happen as soon as the requirement is met. Okay, so this, when it is placed from hand, that's the only time you can activate this skill. So that is the auto ability. Next, we have the critical value. So the critical value is the amount of damage that this unit will do before anything modifies or modulates that value. So for example, if Alt Mile hits my opponent and the attacks the opponent and the attack goes through, the attack will deal 1 damage to my opponent. And there are very, very easy ways to modulate this number, and I'll get into that later on as we explain more of the cards. So next we have the nation flag. So in Vanguard there are many different nations that all have different aesthetics. So this is the nation flag for the United Sanctuary. So this is where all the knights are, and all of the majestic dragons and goddesses and, you know, really nice looking stuff are. And yeah, so you can also tell from the background of what we call the clan name. So Blue Sky Knight Alt Mile is from a clan called Royal Paladins. In Vanguard, once you choose a clan, you can only use cards from that clan. So there's no, in that way, deck building is a little more restricted, unlike in other games, or in Yu-Gi-Oh, where you can take two completely unrelated archetypes and put them together and find a way to make them work. So that is one of the grounds for building a deck in Vanguard. There used to be a format called Extreme Format, but that created so many broken plays that nobody really plays it. At least I haven't played it very much. So next we have its type, and Blue Sky Knight Alt Mile, of course, is a human. He is an anime 2D human, and these also play a role in some card abilities. Not all of them, but some of them do take that into consideration. And of course we have this normal unit. So normal units are just regular units that you use to battle with. There are different types of units in the game, which we'll be getting to, like I said, but yeah, we'll get into this. So one thing that I wanted to point out is the parallel again. So Cyberse is the typing is the same as Altmile being a human, and the clans are not the archetype per se, because certain clans, all clans have their own certain archetypes within them. So it wouldn't be one-to-one in terms of equivalent to say that clans equal archetypes. And we'll get into that later. And yeah, so that is about everything I believe that I can cover. So let me get into grading now. Alright guys, now that you know the parts and elements of the card, save for one thing that I'll be going over once we hit it, let's go into the types of cards that you'll run into in the standard format of Cardfight Vanguard. So the first are your order cards. There are two types of order cards. There are the blitz orders and the normal orders. Now the difference between the two is that your blitz orders do not go into your main deck. As you can see here, this card is a ticket card and cannot be put in a deck. And this one does go into your deck. The normal orders have a specific way of working, and we'll get into that once we hit the gameplay aspect of the game. And one more thing, which I literally forgot up until this very second, we have our imaginary gift cards. So these are also what we would call tickets, tokens, so on and so forth. So there are three types of clans. There are the Force clans, the Protect clans, and the Axle clans. Each one does something different, and each one has different mechanics, and I will be going over those in more detail in the next part of the series. I'm totally making this a series. It's taking way too long to be able to explain all in one video. But these are imaginary gift tokens. That's what we call them. All right. These also do not go into your main deck. Next, we have our normal units. So as you can see here, one thing that is different with grade 1s, 2s, and 0s from grade 3s is that they have something called a shield value. And these are what you use to defend attacks. And again, I will get into how that works later on in a later video. I'll be doing these very often so that you guys can keep all the information fresh in your minds. But one thing that I need to stress, or one thing that I need to emphasize very quickly, is the way that you progress in this game. So both players will start off with something that we call a starting Vanguard. Now this can be any grade 0, but there are different you can choose anything. They all basically do the same thing, but these are always sort of singled out by this ability here. When rolled upon, draw one card. Then if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 1 or greater, put a quick shield ticket into your hand, which is this baby right here. So there is a difference with going first and going second, just like in Yu-Gi-Oh! But this is how you know it is a starting Vanguard. It has an ability once you ride on top of it. Now a ride is the mechanic that we use to progress in the game of Vanguard. And the way that we do that is, if we are at grade 0, we take a grade 1 from our hand and we put it on top of that grade 0. And that lets us, again, draw the card. And if we're going second, basically, and our opponent already did this before us, we get one of these babies in our hand. And that is the general progression of the game. You go from grade 0 to grade 1 to grade 3 to grade 2. I can't even count. And to grade 3. Now some decks do have grade 4s, but not all of them do, so I'm not going to cover it right now. If you guys want me to, then let me know, but there isn't really much of a difference. You just stay at grade 4. Now one thing that I have to also mention is the grade ability. As you can see here, each grade has a different ability that shapes the way that the game is played. And I will get into these more when gameplay comes around, because knowing it now won't really help you. But yeah, these are our normal units, and they are all sort of shown visually by having this black bottom at the bottom. But yeah, they all also say normal unit, and as you can see here, they all have different abilities and timings and everything, which we'll get into later on if you guys want to see specific builds and stuff like that. So there we go, those are our normal units. And last but not least, we have our trigger units. Now these are all, trigger units are all grade 0s. And these are the cards that turn the tide of some games. I have been saved by trigger units, and I have also been completely demolished by trigger units. But we'll get into what each of these does. I am looking at a force clan, so there is one type of trigger that I don't have with me on this table right now. But once I get into what that clan is, we'll go straight into them. Okay. So there are 4 types of triggers, but because there's this one, I'll go into it. So each of these triggers have an ability depending on which one you draw. So as you can see here, like I mentioned earlier, all units have a critical base value of 1. Critical triggers, if you draw them, increase any of your units' critical value. So instead of doing 1 damage, you'll do 2, and that is 1/3 of your opponent's health in this game, which is nice, and is super cheese if if things go a certain way. Now, one thing that all trigger units have in common is that they grant 10,000 attack power, 10,000 strength to any unit of your choosing. And the way that this works, again, I will get into once we get into the gameplay videos. But there are critical triggers, which add 1 damage to whatever unit you choose. There are draw triggers that let you draw a card, obviously. And we have our heal triggers, which let you heal 1 point of damage if you and your opponent share the same amount of damage. So if you have 2 damage and your opponent has 2 damage, or if you have more damage. So if your opponent has 0 damage and you have 1, and then you pull a heal trigger, then you heal 1. But if your opponent has 2 and you have 1, then nothing happens. You only get the power bonus. And those are the types of cards that you have in your deck. Now I'm going to go into deck composition a little bit, since this is sort of, general card discussion. And a card deck of Vanguard has 50 cards in it, no more and no less. Now, within that, you have to make sure that you have 16 trigger units, no more and no less. And I should have done this earlier. So 16 trigger units. Now this can be a combination of whatever you like. Some people like to put in 12 criticals and 4 heals. Some people like to put in no criticals, 12 draws and 4 heals. Some people like to do a mix of the two, and depending on what deck you are using, it really does depend. And the only restrictions that you have are that you can only have 4 heal triggers. Regardless of what name, you can only have a maximum of 4 heal triggers in a deck. And the other restriction are what we call sentinels. Now sentinels are what well, at least this one is what we call a perfect guard. This makes it so that no matter what happens during a battle, you do not take any damage from it. And you can only have 4 of these, as you can see from the continuous ability here. Sentinel, you may only have up to 4 cards with Sentinel in a deck. So regardless of what it is, what unit it is, because there are multiple different types of this, you can only have 4. And Unlike staples in Yu-Gi-Oh, these are also restricted to a certain clan. Alright guys, that is it for episode 1 of How to Vanguard from Yu-Gi-Oh! I am, yes, filming this in post because my camera died the last time. So, yeah, stay tuned for episode 2. We'll be going over the imaginary gifts in Vanguard, and hopefully, if it doesn't take too long, I'm just gonna go over it really quickly. We'll go straight into the field as well. Anyway, thank you for watching. I am Jello, the Casual Card Gamer. Take care.